Hello and welcome to Core Values, the All Things Broken Arrow Public Schools podcast. I'm Greg Spencer alongside my host, Chuck Perry. Chuck, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
We have two very special guests today, and we're here to talk about school safety and security. We've got Executive Director of, I'm trying to read your badge from over here, but Student Services, Derek Blackburn, and Jeff Martin, our Head of Security for the district. How are you guys today?
Doing very well.
I'm doing good.
So today and this week as we speak is National Security Officer Appreciation Week. So that's a big deal. We've got a lot of great officers in the district that work for us. Talk a little bit about the positive stories that are out there, and just, you know, Jeff, I know you work closely with those guys on a day-to-day basis.
The stories just come in daily from the staff at the different sites and the parents and that, speaking on how much they appreciate having the security officers at their schools where their children are at. They just are just enamored with it, and it's been a very positive thing for us.
And I hear that a lot, the feedback from the staff. They really appreciate that. And I think our officers have integrated as part of the staff. When they're at that site, they interact with our students. They walk the perimeter of the building, checking for propped open doors. They're keeping an eye on things. And so I appreciate that. They're not there to not only for the security, that's their main job, but also to make a positive impact on that site.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We tell them the primary thing is build those relationships with the staff and the students and the parents. And that's what makes the world go around, is building relationships and being able to work with each other for that common goal.
That's right.
Derek, what about you? You got anything to add in terms of just, you know, giving a shout out to those guys across the district and ladies? I know there's some out there as well that do such a great job.
Yeah, I just appreciate the fact that they come in every day and their goal is to again, make those relationships, but they're also put in situations where they have to make decisions, and they do carry a weapon. So they understand in the back of their mind, they are there. They are our first responder in case there is ever a threat. And God forbid there ever be one, but we do have them for that reason. So they are a part of our team, and they are crucial in regards to providing a safe environment for our sites.
Talk about that a little bit more in regard to the training that takes place, and specifically our CERT team. Probably most individuals out there would not realize what a CERT team is and how this has been in place for many years. And there's a concerted effort to stay on the cutting edge and make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our students and staff safe. You know, we've seen a lot in the news lately with some school shootings and various other things, but we don't want to be reactionary. We want to be proactive, and I feel like we have for many years.
Yeah, I'm going to let the training component go over to Mr. Martin for that piece, and then I will answer that question in regards to our CERT team.
Sure thing. All the security guards are CLEAT certified armed security guards. They've gone through a basic state certification course that is a requirement. When they get on with us, though, we have a regular training that we do with the assistance of the Broken Arrow Police Department. We utilize their facilities. We utilize some of their training officers. So all the laser training, which is the active shooter response training that the state has, we're trained by Broken Arrow Police Department. They utilize our facilities. It's kind of a trade-off. Use our facilities. You can train your officers in the schools that they would be responding to, as well as having our officers go through that training with them. So we're getting the exact same training that the officers are getting in regards to that. We have our annual, actually biannual firearms qualifications that we go through. The state only requires you to do it once. We qualify twice, and we utilize the officer qualification course. We don't use the security guard one, so we take it just a little step above what they have and what is required from them. And then we start working a lot on whether it be CPR, AED, stop the bleed. So when we do have a situation that they can act in first aid, because there's a good chance they may be the first person there. So that's the kind of things that we work on.
And I'll also say, just to, Coach, the more we can prepare our our security officers to address an immediate threat and make them feel comfortable and confident that they can. So in the event that if it ever does happen, they have already in their mind kind of gone through this, and that's why we do so much every year.
I think that's great. Our number on our security guard staff, compare it to 5 years ago to where we are today.
Oh my goodness, yes. 5 years ago, basically we were just at the high schools. We would have 3 people at the high school. We would have a person at the freshman academy and a person at the options academy. Well, we've expanded well beyond that. Now we have people that are at the middle schools and they respond to the elementary schools. So a middle school site will have a person that goes to a couple more elementaries that feed into that site itself so that they are able to address any needs. The times of arrival and dismissals are offset enough that they are able to be there to greet the kids as they're coming in. That's from the high school on down to the early childhood centers. They're greeting them as they're coming in. The parents are getting a chance to see them. We're constantly moving around. We don't establish a pattern. We want everybody not to know necessarily when we're going to be there and when we won't be there. And we're always able to respond. The principals all have our numbers that they're able to contact us immediately if they have something. We have the rave panic button that is also utilized that all the officers for the schools that they have, they're on that particular rave. So if a site utilizes their rave panic button, whether it be the staff assist or a call to 911, that officer is getting that same notification. If they're not on site already, they're going to be there shortly.
I think you bring up a good point. You know, you talked about, you know, the overwhelming majority of what these officers are doing are just day-to-day positive things, right? Interacting with the kids and getting to know the staff. There are those unfortunate events that we deal with from time to time, but we just want to make sure people understand that, you know, overwhelmingly, these are officers that are making positive impact with our students and staff.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, with National Security Officer Appreciation Week, some of the sites have already started putting up some little banners and doing some things for the security officers. Most of us didn't realize that this is an annual thing, the 3rd week of September, and the sites kind of made us aware of it. So that was pretty good.
That's great. That's great. And again, our most vulnerable population are elementary kids. Yeah. 3 years ago, 3.5, we weren't patrolling those sites.
Weren't there. No.
We are now. And
absolutely.
I think that's a message that I would like to get out. Talk about the CERT team. What is the CERT team? What's CERT stand for? And is it just a BA thing or is it a nationwide thing?
Yeah, so CERT came about, or we implemented it almost 10 years ago. CERT is School Emergency Response Team. And the primary goal of this team which is made up of administrators, counselors, security officers, nurses, it is to create a team that in the event that we have to evacuate a school, how would we actually get those kids reunified back to their parents? So their job is in a moment's notice to come together to formulate a plan and address the concerns while first responders may be addressing the issue at the site. And then we're working on where we're going to be moving students, how we get those parents notified, and how we get those kids back to their parents safely. It doesn't have to be necessarily an emergency or where our minds go to. The very first time we ever enacted it, we had a situation where we had a gas leak at a school site, and it was recommended that those kids be moved. And this was at an elementary, and we were able to move those students to another elementary, get them fed, communicate to parents, and get them back to their parents, whether that was through the buses at the end of the day or throughout the day itself. Doubling the size of an elementary is a task in itself. And, of course, the communication is huge with parents, but that was very successful. We continue to train that team every year, and we run scenarios so, again, that they're prepared in any type of event that we have. We also try to coordinate with our local police and fire, so to determine what they might do in these scenarios, and that helps us, and we just coordinate and work as a partnership in those types of situations.
And those are a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't necessarily see that we are preparing for, again, in case a fortunate event happens. We don't want to be learning, building the planes we fly. We want a team together, knowing what they do. As far as lockdown drills and such, what are what are we doing as a school district to prepare, again, for those events in case they do happen?
Well, the state requires us to do our security drills, whether it be lockout or lockdown, as well as tornado and other drills that are required by the state. We do those at the beginning of each semester, but our staff also takes additional steps in the use of our RAVE application program that communicates to everybody the immediacy of a concern. And the goal is to get our kids in the safest area or location based on the event that's taking place. And our staff, well, Mr. Perry, we had a scenario just a week ago, and even though thankfully there was not an immediate threat and there was no validity to it, we did take steps to go ahead and secure the building just to make sure that everybody was safe. And the reports that I had from our teachers is that our kids knew exactly what to do in that situation, which is calming in a situation that you don't necessarily have all the information. So I feel like that our staff is prepared for possible threats or a scenario that turns out to be nothing, and feel confident that they can address those issues in that time period.
You know, as somebody that's not only a director in communications at the district level, but also has kids in the district, my perspective is, I kind of see both sides of it from a parent and from the communications level. I know this day and age, it's harder than ever to once those threats, like you talked about, get out, they're out there quickly. Social media, it spreads, the parent chats, things like that. Talk a little bit about how you guys handle that on your end in the communication detail.
Well, that's a tough one, I'll be honest with you. And we're so used to getting information immediately that parents sometimes need to understand that when something is brought to our attention, we have to start to investigate it to provide additional information back to the parents. So, and those communications can be multiple facets, whether if the police contact us and say they've received a notification, typically we're hearing word of mouth from kids. Yeah. But sometimes we do have parents that reach out and say that their child heard this and we're letting you know. It really doesn't matter how it comes to us. We contact Mr. Martin, make sure that his team is working it. We work with the police department to see if we can figure out if there's any credible component to this. We have our principals asking investigative type questions of our kids. For example, who did they hear this from? Were they a witness to it? Do they have names, descriptions, et cetera? Just trying to get to the bottom of what has actually happened, but ultimately making sure our kids are safe first. So as we're trying to figure out all of this and parents are within seconds of hearing it and wanting a response, we just ask that parents understand that we are working this, and as soon as we can give you some credible information, we will provide that to you the best that we can.
Well, and I was in a communications meeting last week when some of that stuff broke, and I can tell you in a span of 15 minutes, it went from threat to problem solved. There wasn't anything. Yeah. And it moves so quickly, but the parents find out so quickly because a kid, if there's a lockdown, they're texting their parents and things like that.
But let's get to real world scenarios that are happening that I feel like if we work together with parents, we can be even more effective. Middle school child comes home and tells the parent that they saw or they heard that so-and-so Johnny had a gun at school today. And so parent goes on social media and said, did anyone else's child tell someone about or hear anything about a gun being at school today? From there, it goes into panic mode for everyone. Our investigation is stalled. It gets more complex. How would you want our parents and students to handle that in a better way? What's a more effective way that we can get to the root of the problem right away and take care of it as quickly as possible?
Really, they have a couple different methods to be able to handle that. Number one, I would contact the school itself to find out whether they have heard anything and pass on, this is what I heard. The first thing they may want to do is ask their child, you said that you heard this. Who did you hear this from? Mm-hmm. What we're finding a lot of is we've got fifth-party statements twice removed that happened in a different state and that kind of thing. It's just so convoluted, and it really makes it difficult for us because we're having to talk to a lot of different people to get down to who actually heard. And so far, the vast majority of that is nobody heard it firsthand. Everybody is getting it from someplace else. It would be better to contact the school, because the second you get on social media or start making phone calls and asking other people, the people that can actually do something with it, the school or the police, they're not getting it third and fourth hand, right, as opposed to getting it right away. If they would contact the school, now after hours, it's understandable. You're not going to have direct access. That would definitely be a time. If you had that concern that you believe that it was valid, then contact the police. They have means and methods to be able to get in contact with us, to be able to let us be aware of what was said and what was going on with the situation. And then we can start getting names of people and finding out, where were you at? When did this happen? Who was around at the time? And start getting those people that we can start asking all the important questions, right, just to see if there's any credibility at all. Or is this the telephone game that it went through multiple different people and changed as it went around to the next person each time?
And I think that's where, social media is not our friend in these threats or, possible sightings of things. We've got to get to the school. And I would even ask that our parents take the time to talk with your children about if they hear something or see something, please talk to a trusted adult, their teacher, principal, report it immediately, because our investigation on our end can start quicker, and Absolutely. We can deal with it that day. When we have 20,000 students already dispersed home in the evening, it becomes more difficult, and you're dealing with that right now.
I'd also say that when you ask your kids these questions, and when we ask the kids, the first thing that you typically states is that they wanted their friends to know. Well, the best way that they can help their friends is actually report that to a principal and or the local law enforcement, so that we can truly start working the issue or the concern. And after hours, I want to reiterate the fact that the police will call us, and we will investigate, provide them all information that we have, especially if we have a name, which allows them to then go to an individual's home and start that investigation sooner rather than later. So please, even though school is not necessarily in session, don't think that you don't have the ability to communicate to us.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that the quicker we can get it. But I agree, yes, anytime. We investigate everything, and we're not going to brush anything under the rug. No. We're not going to hide anything. We want to operate in full transparency to our parents. You deserve that. I've got a granddaughter now in the district. It's important that we do let everybody know what's going on, but the quicker we can get that information, the quicker we can act.
And for us to be able to release the information, we want to make sure that whatever information we're releasing is true and correct. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get through that process, because the last thing that we want to do is have to come back shortly thereafter and say, well, that actually wasn't true. So we're having to verify a lot before we give the information out. Unlike on social media, it's all unverified information that goes out there raw, and people read into it whatever they want to read into it at the time. And in our society right now, we're fairly frightened about a lot of different things. There's a lot of things going on that are pretty scary. So right away, if they can if your child is at school, talk to somebody there at the school right away. If they're home and they didn't talk to anybody at the school, don't put it out on social media. Go ahead and call the school. Let us know. We can start the investigation immediately. If we don't have access to us, the police department would be the place to go, because if you feel there's that much of a threat, the police do want to know.
All right, Jeff, talk to us a little bit about how do we we get so many different things that parents see out there, and kids and staff. How do we determine what is credible?
Yeah, that credible is a term that you hear all the time in reference to this, and it ends up being, is there somebody that we can talk to that can give us firsthand knowledge? We would even come closer to it if we had secondhand knowledge, but right now everything has been so far removed. And in speaking to a lot of my counterparts in other districts throughout the state, they're receiving the same type of information. And we take a look at that. We take a look to see what type of information is this. Is it a specific time, a specific location? Is there a grievance that's been mentioned specifically? Is the language utilized in whatever this text or TikTok or Snapchat, any of those type of things? Is it language that is common and typical in the area? Do they mention something specific, Broken Arrow or Tulsa area? That what you get is so much extremely generic. They have even gotten some that have gone to the point that they will cut out the piece and they'll put in a local. But we still take a look at the totality of what's being given there. And when we look at those things, we don't find credibility. If you don't have anybody that you can interview, if you don't have anybody that you can speak to, you're looking for it. We still are looking. We don't stop looking. Even if we don't see anything credible, we're still monitoring the kids. We're still engaging with them so that we could have that component. And with that, if there is something, the kids will come to us and let us know.
Well, and that's, I think what you're saying is my biggest fear is every one of these that come in, we do take seriously to investigate. What I'm worried about is that's going to take us away from an actual occurrence. And to kind of piggyback on that, I would like parents, again, to talk to their students about making any false reports too, because Mr. Blackburn, I think you would be able to talk about there could be school consequences for that, and in a larger sense, a law enforcement consequence also.
Yeah, so you have two components. The school, obviously, the disruption that it can create, the number of students being pulled out by parents. And I understand parents being fearful or wanting to make sure that their child's safe. Again, we're trying to empower you. But when you look at a student that is their goal is to disrupt the school day, and it impacts that many students, and we can show that they've done this on purpose, we are going to take disciplinary actions against that student. And it can be considered a crime, especially if they're stating that a bomb or a shooting or something of a violent act, which has happened across the nation. And I'm going to reiterate again what Jeff said. If a kid sees a social media post and it is vague, it has no name to it, how did they get that information in the first place? I would empower your kids to take a picture of it so that you can go back and look at it and review with them to see if there's anything worth looking at. But again, empower your kids. We want to partner with you, and students that are, these aren't always students either. We have people nationwide that are out of school, but yet they're using this as a tool or a way to either increase fear in the United States or to disrupt your kids, or just because it's a joke, and it's a sick joke. So we want to partner with our families and empower those kids that are obviously on social media. Take a picture of it, ask questions, and reach out to us.
And I think it's important. Again, I know we've said this, but a student takes that picture. Don't take that picture and then put it on social media. No. And again, get that to law enforcement if it's after hours. If not during the school day, let us know immediately so we can jump on it. And again, if you feel like it's credible enough, law enforcement may be your first call. But at the end of the day, every time something goes to social media and it's not investigated, it just spins out of control so quickly.
And it does wear everybody down after a while. Everybody's heard of the story about the boy that called wolf, and that. So it does wear people down, and we don't ever want to get to that point where we're overlooking something because there's so much similarity to all the false things that have occurred. Yeah. So it's difficult, but we try to stay on top of it to ensure that we stay fresh with it. But in the same regards, we need a lot of help in keeping that crying wolf down.
And I think it's like the airport. It's not a place to talk about a gun.
No.
And at school, it's not either, unless it's, students see or know something. You don't do it on the airport, and there's some major consequences for that.
Absolutely.
And I would say, just in parting, be a part of the solution, not the problem.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Well, and on that topic, is there any advice you guys might give to parents out there to teach their kids to just the understanding that jokes, social media jokes, and online things have to be taken credible? What are some things that they can do to hopefully help those kids understand the consequences?
We just don't live in a time period now that these can be taken lightly. You may know your child and that they may never do something like this, but unfortunately other people don't. And so that has to be taken in seriously when these statements are made and investigated, and what's the purpose of that. Unfortunately, throughout the nation, I'm sure people have said that this kid would never do something, and yet something does happen. That's why we have to take it seriously. It's nothing against the individual parents, but please understand these statements do impact others. And please have that conversation with them that this is not a joke. And it doesn't matter what their age is. In fact, probably the earlier you have a discussion with them, the better.
I agree.
Jeff, any final thoughts?
I think that really does pretty much cover everything there. Social media has some very good things that go along with it, but there is so much bad. And this is an area, and this is a time, it's a teaching moment for the parents with their child to be able to go, these are the do's and the don'ts. And this goes a long ways on, who are you getting this information from? What format are you in that you have unfettered access to all these things? It's a real good time to say, hey, no, we're not going to go there. We're not going to be on these platforms. We are going to take a look closer at what you're watching and what you're seeing there. And it's not trying to keep the kids down, but it is trying to filter a little bit what they're seeing and how they can react to it, because they may not totally fully grasp exactly what they're doing when they pass that information on. And that's what we want to do. We want them to know this can be very serious and there's consequences.
Good.
Absolutely. We would like to thank Derek Blackburn and Jeff Martin for joining us on this episode of Core Values. As always, you can find all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Podcasts. And thanks, Chuck Perry, as always, for being here, and we will see you guys next time.